Drum roll, please. You are on your final unit before winter break. So I am super excited. I hope you're excited too, but we've got a lot to learn before we let out for Christmas break and kind of call it a fantastic half year. So we're going to start, this unit is called the geological time scale. We're going to start learning about it. I forgot, we've got modified notes because of how we are learning right now with everybody being online. So here's how you're going to do your notes. They'll be posted to your modules, which I haven't posted them yet because I'm not ready for you to see them all. I do not want you to get overwhelmed. Give me another second to pull them up. So normally we would do our notes in our notebooks. Everything would be a-okay, just fine. But because we have everybody online right now, we're actually going to have to modify them. So here's how it's going to work. You're going to use the lecture video, which you're watching right now. This is actually a 2-day note session. To complete the following set of notes electronically, you're going to open the document. They're guided notes just like you would take in class, except this time you're going to do them electronically. So you'll click File. You're going to make your own copy. Make sure you change the share settings so that I can see it, anybody with the link. If I can't see it, I'm going to mark it as 0, so change your share settings. Make your own copy. Be sure the shared settings are changed. Use the Zoom call, which I'll be doing, or this video lecture to fill in the guided notes. Please, for the sake of grading, use a different color or bold for your answers so that I can see that you're taking the notes. Submit the assignment. You'll get your credit for this. So this is your 2-day assignment. Let's get started with our notes though. So what is Earth's time scale? We have labeled the kind of history of the Earth as being the geological time scale. We define it as a record of the life forms and geological events in Earth's history. So this kind of combines our two branches of science, both biology and geology. We're looking at both when we're talking about this. There are 2 ways that we define, or that we can use or create this time scale. The very first one, we developed it by studying the rock layers and fossils. We call this relative dating. So, and that's actually what we're going to study in the next couple days. But this is using the rock layers and the fossils that we find. So this is really combining a lot of our geology study or our studies of rocks. This is relative, so it's not exact. We have, although, developed with our recent advent of technology, what we call radioactive dating, which we also term that as absolute dating. So we are absolutely, or we'll put that in quotes, sure or pretty confident that those rocks are this old, meaning that the individual stuck in this rock is that old. But those are 2 different ways that we kind of created this record of Earth's history. All right, so here is what we know right now as far as the history of the Earth. This isn't the best representation, so these are the 3 eras that we have. There's actually 4, so this is the most recent in our Cenozoic era, and then our least recent, or in our furthest past right here, is the Paleozoic. And there's actually an entire another era that's not listed on this chart right here, called the what is it called? The Precambrian era, and that is before we have the appearance of life. And that is actually, if I took a football field and I put the history of life in scale with a football field, what you see here on our graph is actually only about 10% of the history of the Earth. And we're going to get into that in just a little second, but this is just an idea of where we're going. We're going to study these different eras specifically during this lecture. So we divide our time. So the largest that we have are called eons. We are in the Phanerozoic eon. That is this entire time right here. So this is all part of an eon. So this is one eon called the Paranoic Anthrocene, and there's a chance that I'm saying that wrong because these are some super hard to pronounce names. If you're at home, I challenge you to start using these words. Just practice them. But Parazoic eon is right here, and all of these eras are part of that one eon. And then we further divide it even more into periods. So like if we take our years into months. So like our eras would be years, and we have 12 months in a year. There are 12 to 13, depending on how you divide them, eras or periods in all of our eras that we have. If you look back on our map right here, you can see that the Cenozoic, or our most recent era, is divided into two periods, the Quaternary period and the Tertiary period. If you go back to the time of the dinosaurs, or the Mesozoic era, the age of the reptiles, it's divided into three periods, and this is the time when we did have dinosaurs. But if you go back to our Paleozoic, or the least recent of our Phanerozoic eon eras, it's divided in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different periods. So it's just a way that we divide time and kind of chunk them. We currently live in the Quaternary period of the Cenozoic era, and even more, we can divide those periods even further into epochs. I do believe I'm saying that right. If I'm not, you're welcome to correct me. But our current epoch is being debated by scientists right now. So the debate is whether we are in the Anthrocene or the Holocene epoch. And for the most part, scientists have leaned more towards the Anthrocene. So the difference here, the Holocene started after our last recent ice age, which was about 12,000 years ago. That marked the end of one epoch and the beginning of our Holocene. But we have debated in the scientific community whether we humans have started our own epoch as the Anthrocene. That's what we would call it. We often divide these, or the deciding factors of where an era starts and one era ends and another begins, or where one period ends and another begins, are mass extinctions. So we humans have caused, due to the human impacts of us on the environment, we've caused a mass extinction. So scientists debate whether we should start a whole new epoch because of that, and they would call that the anthro, meaning man, the time of man. So anthro means man, scene means time, time of man. So it is very debated. It was first this idea of changing our epoch because of the mass extinctions created by humans was first popularized in 2000 by a scientist named Paul Crutzen, and he's a Nobel Prize winner. The problem, though, with changing this is if you go back to our first definition of the history of life, we often most importantly, we don't only focus on the living things, but we focus on the geological or rock evidence. And the scientists that are against changing our epoch or deciding that we need to enter another one have said that there's not enough rock or geological evidence to support the changing from Holocene to Anthrocene. So that's just some common things that are going around in science that have to do with our geological time here. Very interesting. Okay, so I was talking about this. So the Precambrian Era, so this is an era that wasn't even listed on our very first one. It begins with the Precambrian Era, and that from when life began to about, let me make sure I'm saying this right, spans about 4.6 billion years ago. The start of the Earth was 4.6 billion years ago to about 541 million years ago. This is actually our longest of the eras. It covers about 88% of Earth's history. So again, if you took the time that Earth has been around and put it on a 100-yard football field, about 88 yards of that would be what was the Precambrian period. And this was a crazy time to be alive. There were definitely no humans alive. This was when our first organism appeared. We call that first organism the cyanobacteria, which we have decided, scientists have said, that this is where all life has kind of evolved from. It's a single-celled bacteria, and it made its energy through photosynthesis. And it's actually what changed our air to have more oxygen for other life to begin. So because it was photosynthetic and it took in carbon dioxide, which before this organism was present, there wasn't a lot of carbon dioxide there wasn't a lot of oxygen on the earth, but they actually changed the composition of the air from a more carbon dioxide based system to now what we have today, which is primarily nitrogen, but the second is oxygen. So really these little tiny organisms made it possible for all other life to exist. This is when our ozone layer began to appear as well. The combination of oxygen and ozone in the atmosphere slowly created an environment that allowed more life forms to develop. So again, if the cyanobacteria did not develop, not only would we not be able to evolve from it, but our environment wouldn't be favorable to life anymore. The end of the Precambrian era, or by the end of the Precambrian era, some simple multicellular organisms had begun to evolve. So cyanobacteria was just one cell big. By the end, we had a couple simple multicellular forms of life, but still nothing like the animals that you see or the life that you see today. So think small and single-celled for our Precambrian era. And remember, don't get the idea that we've been around for a really long time, because in the history of the Earth, we really haven't. Our 4 eras, just to give you an overview of where we're going. Our Precambrian era, again, covered about 88% of Earth's history. So most of our football field here, so about 88 yards. The remaining 12 yards are the rest of our eras here. So Paleozoic are the age that we call ancient life. So this happened from 544 million years ago and lasted about 3 million years, so to about 245 million years ago. And then when our Mesozoic era, or our middle life, started, the Mesozoic era was the age of reptiles. The Paleozoic area was it doesn't have any fancy names, but it was very much so the age of the exoskeleton, or like invertebrate times, so things without a backbone. Mesozoic, we had our backbones developing, and we call this the age of the reptiles. We'll talk more about it though. This lasted about 180 million years. And then the Cenozoic era, which is our most recent life, the age of the mammals. It spans from about 65 million years ago and continues into present day. So those are our 4 eras. We're going to start with our Paleozoic era. We talked a little bit about Precambrian, but honestly, we don't know that much about it, besides that that's where life first started, and we didn't get very advanced with our life, and that it took a long time. That's about it. It was just so long ago that we just don't know much. Our Paleozoic era, though, we do call ancient life. So we see an explosion of life in the oceans begin during this time. So this was very much so a marine-based system. So much of our life, actually almost all of it, unless it was single-celled, was inside our ocean. Most of the continents were covered in warm, shallow seas. Invertebrates were dominant. We call one of our special ones are trilobites. These are one of our index fossils. We'll talk more about those later, but those were kind of a funny looking, actually I'll have a picture of it, I do believe, but a funny looking invertebrate, and we use those to kind of determine how old rocks are. But again, we'll talk about that later with our fossil lesson. Fish emerged during this time, and then fish eventually evolved into amphibians, or our aquatic-based life. The end of the Paleozoic era is often called the age of amphibians because of this. Early land plants began to evolve. Our mosses, ferns, and cone-bearing plants like our coniferous plants like our pine trees. And early coal-forming forests were also formed. So if you're burning coal, it's probably possible, or most likely possible, that it was formed during our Paleozoic era. This is where my lecture is going to cut me off, so I will pick back up with some common animals and facts about the Paleozoic era.